On March 1st, 2024, Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, passed away due to acute subdural hematoma. He was 68 years old. This news only broke about a week later on the official Dragon Ball website. None of us knew him personally. He was a very private individual who rarely left his home or even did interviews. But through his work and his manga, his world and his characters, our lives were filled with magic and filled with unforgettable moments and memories. And today, I'm gonna share how his creations have impacted my life and how I got into the wonderful world of Dragon Ball. So I don't actually have a definitive first memory of Dragon Ball actually. The main reason being is that when I was born, I had an older sister and cousins who were already Dragon Ball fans, and their fandom and influence was naturally passed on to me. So I was basically a Dragon Ball fan from day one. So I was showered with a bunch of DBZ toys and clothing and stuff as a kid. Like, I didn't know how good I had it when it came to that stuff. The DBZ merch that I had as a kid, as an adult now, I'm absolutely jealous of younger me. And we had a bunch of DVDs at home, there was some Cell Saga episodes and some DBZ movies that I watched religiously. Those movies were Lord Slug, Cooler's Revenge, Return of Cooler, and Super Android 13. So I watched these movies and episodes religiously and remembered all the dialogue and moments. So I'm very nostalgic for them. And when it comes to TV viewing, growing up in South Africa, I'm sure most of my South African viewers know this, we had this channel called SABC2. Monday to Thursday, 5 p.m. every day. That was your destination. A lot of you guys had Toonami, we had this. That was every South African kid's childhood from the 2000s. You finished school, came home and did your homework and stuff, and then time to watch Dragon Ball Z. Next day at school, we'll meet up with our friends and discuss the previous episode, and most of the time, we're just talking about how we are waiting for Goku to show up, or he finally showed up, or there's 90% dialogue, and then as the fight is about to start, you get a preview for the next episode. But yeah, that was SABC2 for you. SABC2 was the introduction to pretty much every South African for Dragon Ball. It was the home of Dragon Ball for South Africans. Over the years, it has broadcasted Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, and most recently, Dragon Ball Super. Now, as I was too young to remember everything that was going on, my earliest childhood memories of watching Dragon Ball and SABC2 consist of late Dragon Ball Z as well as Dragon Ball GT. I watched this franchise in completely wrong order. So I watched some Z movies and episodes, watched GT, watched Dragon Ball, then watched Z from the beginning. So when Goku was getting kicked around by Raditz, for example, I was sitting there wondering why he's not turning Super Saiyan. Because I genuinely didn't know, because I didn't know I was watching it out of order. But then I found out the actual order of events when I played the video games. And I don't know if other countries had this, but back when Dragon Ball Z was hot and airing on TV every day, we had these Simba chips, which is potato chips, and in the packets of these chips, we would get these Tazos, which are these coins, these large coins with Dragon Ball characters. There would be a different moment on each coin, and you'd be able to collect them all, I had a big box filled with a bunch of different Tazos. Unfortunately though, my mother, she threw them away. I mean, but I was a kid, I was probably putting that stuff in my mouth and stuff, so she probably thought it was germs and dirty for me and stuff like that. But I'm still kind of mad to this day that I couldn't hold on to them. But yeah, and then also I remember, I'm not even sure if this was an official brand, but I'm sure that it was, at least for South Africans. I'm not sure if you'll had this overseas as well. We had Dragon Ball GT branded potato chips, so it had its own specific flavor. You had Gogeta, I think it was Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, and Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta on the front cover, and then you had Super Saiyan 4 Goku at the back. And then in these packets, they would have like these little toys, you know, like those spinning tops that would like have a different Dragon Ball GT character on them. So like I remember having a Goku top, and I would spin that and play with that all the time. But yeah. So as I was saying, I found out the actual order of events of the series only when I played the video games. And the funniest thing, while not actually being funny, is that the first Dragon Ball video game that I played was when I was in the hospital. I was really sick at the time, and I was actually dying, actually. I'm not going to disclose what I was going through, but I spent most of my days screaming in pain or drifting in and out of consciousness and sleeping for long extended periods of time. And then I heard rumblings of there being a PlayStation room in the hospital. Oh, now this piques my interest and I catch wind of it. This was me at what I would say is my gaming prime as well. This is the time period of my life where I put the most time into video games ever. So once I found out that this was a thing, I checked it out. I see the PS2 there, and I'm looking in the cupboard for what games they got, and then I see it. The first Dragon Ball Z Budokai game. And I'm like, holy crap, there's a Dragon Ball Z game? So I started playing it, and from that day forth, for my entire duration at the hospital, you had to literally pry the controller from my hands. That became my escape from my illness. Like, there were times where I was super weak and stuff, but I'd find the strength to get out of bed and go play this game. So unknowingly to me, it was giving me strength. It was giving me a lot of motivation. And I'd like to think that it helped in my recovery process, because before that I was really depressed. I couldn't move. I was screaming or crying most of the time from the pain, And that all changed when I started playing this game. So Budokai 1 holds a very special place in my heart, despite it being insanely difficult in my personal opinion. Then, when I got out of the hospital a while later, I visited my cousin one day, and he had another Dragon Ball game. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. The definitive Dragon Ball game for any fan during this time period. Countless sleepovers and visits and tournaments and memories, this game brought us closer together. The same cousins who got me into Dragon Ball when I was born. And then my other cousin, he bought Dragon Ball Z Infinite World. So depending on whose house we went to, we'd have a different game to play. When it comes to Infinite World and Budokai Tenkaichi 3, those are the games that I remember the most fondly, because I spent most of my childhood playing them, and not only that, playing it with people that I loved. That's the thing about Dragon Ball. It brings people together. Toriyama created this amazing world and brought us together with it. Whether it's stuff that I mentioned about my childhood or getting older, playing games like Raging Blast, Xenoverse, or Fighters with my best friends, or going crazy over Gogeta Blue or UI Goku, and watching DBS films in cinema, or me just making YouTube videos about Dragon Ball games, like Dragon Ball Legends. There's just so many good memories. It's almost endless. And I know Toriyama wasn't perfect, and his writing wasn't always perfect, and modern Dragon Ball might not be the same, might not be as good quality as it once was, but it brought us together. It still brought us together. Like Goku, for example. Take Goku, for example. Goku rarely beats the bad guys on his own. He almost always gets some help, whether it be an assist from Vegeta or someone teaching him some new moves and techniques. Goku to me is my favorite fictional character. I try to model a lot of my life based on him, because he values family and friendship and bettering oneself. He is at peace and cheerful, even in the most dire circumstances. He is hope personified. He is all about self-improvement, and I love that. Goku has gotten me through some really dark times. When things are going south, I try to remind myself to be more like Goku. And I mentioned this in the initial video yesterday, but I said that I've been doing martial arts for a decade thanks to Dragon Ball, and I have strengthened friendships while creating new ones thanks to Dragon Ball. To me, that's what it's all about. Togetherness. We love Dragon Ball. We love what Toriyama created. And I'm gonna go through some comments on a community post discussing some of your most memorable and favorite moments, because I really want to showcase and illustrate how different some of us are, but we are still connected by that one thing. So let me go through some comments quickly. This comment here says, and I really like this one, it says, not necessarily from the show, but me and my younger brother playing Ultimate Tenkaichi together after school every day. He would always get pressed because I always won the rock, paper, scissors. Like, this type of uniqueness, you know, this, everyone has a different story of like their favorites and most memorable Dragon Ball stories. Like, most of us are not the same, but like we're all connected by the same thing, you know. And I think that this story illustrates the togetherness that Dragon Ball gives us, you know. This guy and his brother playing the game together, like that to me is like really wholesome and just personifies togetherness, you know. This one says, the first Dragon Ball scene that I ever saw was Goku turning Super Saiyan 3. It's quite a treasured memory for me. Also, the first video game I ever played was Budokai Tenkaichi 3. So yeah, Dragon Ball pretty much kickstarted my childhood. And boy, what a way to start your fandom. Like, let me tell you something. Goku going Super Saiyan 3, like, that's like the ultimate most hype moment ever. Like, people in school were raving about that for like a week. And then, you know, like, not even a week actually, like years. And then Budokai Tenkaichi 3, like, that's the definitive Dragon Ball game growing up, you know. So like, what a way to start your fandom. Like, that's literally perfection when it comes to becoming a Dragon Ball fan. And this other one says, Dragon Ball Z Kai on Nicktoons was the start of my Dragon Ball journey. Tuning in every week to see the next episodes, hearing Dragon Soul every time, while waiting to see what happens next in the magical adventures. The Frieza saga was my favorite. They perfectly portrayed Frieza as the diabolical tyrant that he is, and the voice lines from the saga still give me chills to this day. Something like that can't be recreated to this day, well, at least for me. Rest in power, Akira. And I totally agree with that. Rest in power, Akira. Frieza, let me tell you something. I am not a fan. Like, okay, when you look at villains nowadays, everyone's a sympathetic villain, or like everyone gets their redemption arc. Frieza is actually like one of the only like proper irredeemable villains that I've ever seen in fiction. Like, I feel like he will never get a redemption arc because he's done too much bad things. You know, he's too evil. He's like literally pure evil. Like, he's literally like the personification of evil. You know, they even got his tag in Dragon Ball Legends, Lineage of Evil. That's Frieza. Yeah, like, Frieza to me should like be like the only one that is irredeemable. And because of that, it makes him stand out. It makes him very iconic. Like, Frieza is probably Dragon Ball's most iconic villain. So those were some comments where on my community post I asked if you guys had any memorable moments that you want to share. Those are the ones that stood out to me most. But for my favorite moments in Dragon Ball, the ones that are remembered most fondly by me, I'd have to go with Goku versus Jackie Chun from Dragon Ball, Goku going Super Saiyan for the first time, Goku arriving in the Saiyan saga for the first time and beating down Nappa, Gohan going Super Saiyan 2 for the first time. That to me is like the greatest moment in Dragon Ball ever, like in history, you know. You know, the whole, even though Toriyama didn't technically write GT, he did work on it, but the Dragon Ball GT ending gets me very emotional, and like it's probably gonna hit differently now, because that's like such a Dragon Ball GT as a whole, that series is a love letter to the character of Goku, and now by extension a love letter to Toriyama, you know, for creating this wonderful character and world. You know, and then the GT special is also something that gets me emotional as well. You know, every time Goku does the spirit bomb as well, you know, like, there's just the feeling, again, I've said this a lot in this video, but togetherness, you know. I just like that wholesome feeling, you know. It's pure, it might be cheesy, but that's the type of stuff that I love, and that's what makes me look at Dragon Ball on a deeper level. Like, it's sometimes it can be so simple, but like, it hits you so hard and it has such an impact on you, you know. And to close this out, to Toriyama sensei, few of us have ever met you or knew you, but you have touched millions of lives through your work. What you created was truly special and has changed so many lives for the better. You will live forever through your iconic creations. Rest in power, rest in peace. Super Saiyajin power.